Happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. And this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Kyle Eighmy. Kyle.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
No, it's very excited.
I've been trying to get you in for a long, long time.
Yes.
And I was starting to doubt your sincerity when you said, sure, I'll come. But
yep.
now here,
and then that's why I
are.
reached out to you. I'm like, I'm serious. We're going to do this. We're going to do this.
Now, you were really sort of like Rhinebeck personified.
Yep.
You were born here
Yep.
some number of years ago. We don't need to go into that.
Yep.
And you went to high school here.
Yep. Graduated in 85.
Right. Did you ever live anywhere other than Rhinebeck?
No. Even after moving like out of my parents' house on Platt Avenue by the fairgrounds, it was like I moved into an apartment in the village of Rhinebeck.
Wow.
And then I went and bought a house in the village of Rhinebeck.
How old were you when you moved into an apartment?
22.
Okay, and what were you doing? So this was after high school, after college? After
high school, I actually got approached by Sandy Williams Lumber.
Right.
Because Sandy was very much involved in the fire company, and I was a member also. And asked me what my intentions were after graduation. And I chose to go work for Sandy. I started out as a delivery driver.
Uh-huh.
And then kind of worked up, through yard foreman and then, counter sales. And then I worked into contractor sales.
Right.
And I did that for 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
23 years at Williams.
Yep, 23 years at Williams. And in between there, I did, in 86, I had the opportunity to go through the police academy, become a part-time police officer for the village of Rhinebeck.
So you're working full-time at Williams.
Yep.
And how did this opportunity to go to the police academy come up?
Small town, or small village, I should say.
Right, especially when you're born and raised here.
I end up working security. I took an opportunity to work security at the Dutchess County Fair.
Okay.
And because I love the fair. Right. That's my life. That's another whole segment. We could get into that.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm like, my next life, I could be a carny. So I worked...
you got to grow your hair long and get some more tattoos.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I worked security at the Dutchess County Fair, and then the police chief at the time, Jim Hanneberg, said, hey, would you like to go to the academy? And I'm like, sure. So in 86, I went to the academy and became a police officer.
And where was the academy?
The academy was at the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office on Hamilton Street.
Okay, and how long a course was that?
Because it was a part-time academy but full-time status. It was 6 months.
What does that mean, part-time academy but full-time
what it is
status?
because we only went Tuesdays and Thursdays and all-day Saturdays.
Okay.
Where a full-time academy would be Monday through Friday, and they can finish it in 3 months.
I see.
So...
That's not so bad, 3 months.
No, but, like I said, it was 6 months. It was fun. It was interesting.
And at the end of that, you were certified to be a full-time police officer.
I chose to stay part-time, but I could have gone on if I went on to, civil service test, and if I, passed and got accepted, I could have gone full-time without going to the academy again.
Right. Did that thought ever cross your mind?
Not really, because I felt like I had both worlds of being a member of the Rhinebeck Fire Department and
so at what point in all this did you join the fire department?
85.
Okay.
May of 85 I joined when I turned 18.
And you have to be 18 to join the fire department?
At the time it was 18.
What is it now?
It's 16.
Huh.
Because actually being a village-owned fire company, we had to pass some resolutions because of the age. And then they had to start off as junior firefighters first. Okay. And then they can take all the classes, but we can't put a 16 or a 17-year-old member into a burning building.
Right.
Because if something happens, then it's the chief's responsibility. It's like endangering the welfare of a child. We can do it under drills, but we can't do it while they're 16, 17. When they turn 18, then they're able to fight fires in terror.
Huh.
Yep.
Wow. So you were a junior firefighter for a spell, or did you join right in?
No, because I was 18. So I was able to go to the classes and start fighting fires right off the bat.
And how was that? It sounds kind of terrifying. Fighting fires.
No, it was like, listen, I tell everybody, it's like, we run into the building as you guys or people are running out. but it's
That's what sounds terrifying.
yeah. It's hard to explain. I mean, I had the opportunity. My father was involved in the fire department. So, anytime there was a call, when I got to that age, I, rode with him to the call and checked it out.
Right.
So then it just
when
started.
you're a little boy, it's all so cool.
Yep. And then it just started building and building. And then, I think, when I was 17, I remember going down to a place called Nichols Oxygen on 9G. And they sold all the fire equipment at Dutchess County, fire departments. I went down and bought my own helmet and coat and had it ready. So when I joined, I had my own stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you still have that helmet?
No.
And
No.
how long did you work for the fire department?
I'm still involved. I'm
Oh.
still involved in the fire company. After 2 years of being in, I started moving through the ranks of lieutenant, captain, then becoming second assistant chief, first assistant chief, and then in 2000, I became chief of the department.
And was that kind of a dream come true?
I didn't think in the beginning, when I became captain, I said, yeah, I'm really liking this. And I really started taking interest and started taking more classes because my goal is I want to be chief. I'm like...
And do you have to take more classes all the way along
See,
as
what we
you
do
raise up through the ranks?
What we do in Rhinebeck is, in order to become a lieutenant, you have to have X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
And then before you become a captain, you have to have X, Y, and Z.
What are some of these X's,
So
Y's, and Z's?
So you got to have obviously essentials of firemanship. That's what it was called back in '85. Now it's called Firefighter 1.
Are there women on the force here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Actually, my wife.
Firefighter 1.
Yeah, my wife was an interior firefighter.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then auto extrication, hazmat classes, incident command classes, management classes, truck operations, pump ops, and everything. There's just a whole slew of classes that we set forth. So then by the time you became chief, you were ready.
Wow. What's the last class you took? Are you still taking them?
Nope. I made all my classes, but we still do, we do training every Monday night at the firehouse.
Okay.
So, whether it's refreshing, or, going over the thermal imaging camera, or we have a criteria that we have to qualify every year on, how to put a Scott pack on.
What's the Scott pack?
Scott pack is the tank that you wear on your back, and it supplies you air going into a burning building.
Okay.
So there's qualifications for that. We have to take physicals every year. Actually, they're coming up tomorrow. We take all interior firefighters take physicals. We have a company that comes in.
The company comes in, they're medical professionals,
Yep.
physicians, and
Yep.
they put you on a treadmill or
No, it's more like your weight, and you have to do a respiratory clearance, and you have to do EKG and everything else, and they do some samples of your blood,
right,
and pretty much see if you're fit.
and samples of your blood for cholesterol and other things you can tell.
Yep. And then they come back, and if something flags, and they notify the chief, and that member is then sidelined until it's corrected.
And do they drug test?
No.
How come?
No, because we can't drug test because of being a volunteer.
It's all volunteer fire
Yeah,
department.
we are 100% volunteer.
And how do you feel about that?
I'm comfortable with it because, if there's ever an incident, then we can.
Oh, if somebody screws up,
Yep.
then they get drug
Or
tested.
if you have suspicion why operating on a call,
right.
you can.
Okay.
Pretty much
That's
we fall under.
kind of good enough.
Yeah, we fall. We don't like the village. The village of Rhinebeck doesn't drug test you when you get hired and so forth. But we do fall under the same, rules of, if I think somebody on a fire truck, was intoxicated, then I would say you're not driving, and then I would send them off to be tested.
And what about when you're a part-time policeman? Do you get drug tested then?
Nope. Nope.
It's it's interesting. I know people. I mean, not so much anymore because some of these things are legal now.
Yeah.
I know people got drug tested. I'm like, you work in advertising.
Right.
If you're not smoking weed or whatever, you should get fired. Or you're
Right.
an artist, you
Right.
should. But things like cop and fireman, I'm like,
Yep.
I don't want.
Yeah.
I want people to be sort of on the straight and narrow.
Right. but they don't. I mean, obviously, if there's a mishap, an accident, or something like that, then it's automatically, takes it to the step of,
Right.
you get sent down to Poughkeepsie. Blood is drawn for alcohol.
I
Anything in your
guess
system.
that happens very rarely.
Very rarely.
Right. Huh.
And the thing is we've been fortunate for the, and I say we've always had in Rhinebeck an older group, which is I feel has been more of a kind of mature. That and the people that we have got in were like either their parents were in, as I did, and so forth. So everybody pretty much understood the concept of their responsibility.
Right. Now you've got 2 kids.
I have 3.
3 kids.
Yep.
Any of them?
My oldest one was never interested.
Okay.
My middle one, Ryan, he joined.
Oh, he did?
Yep, he joined, and it just...
So is he... how old is he?
He's 22.
Okay.
Yep, so he joined, and it just... He doesn't do well with blood. I mean, he'll pass out if he gets the flu shot.
Really?
Yep.
So
I mean, he couldn't even get his face painted like at an amusement park, and
Right.
he would get we would like break out in a sweat.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Huh.
So he was like, "Nope, I'm done." And then
So he did it for a few years and then...
did it for about a year, and he's like, and I never forced him. I
Right.
never forced any of my kids. If this is what you want to do, and he looked at me and goes, "Dad, I don't think this is for me." I said, "That's okay."
But a year earlier, he said, "Dad, I think this is for me."
Yeah, so I'm okay with that.
That must have been a great moment as a parent.
It was. We got some
Right.
good pictures together, some drills and stuff like that, with our turnout gear on.
Right.
And then Lily's a member, my daughter.
Okay.
Yep.
And how old is she?
She's 17.
So she's a junior member
Yep.
of the Rhinebeck all-volunteer, Rhinebeck Village all-volunteer fire department.
Yep.
But it's the Rhinebeck Village Fire Department serves Rhinebeck Town.
Yes. What happens is the town can't run or own a fire department. So what it is, it's called the protective district. And it's complicated. So the town has protective districts.
Okay.
So what they do is that throughout the years, even way before I started, they were divided up between Hillside, Rhinecliff, and Rhinebeck. And then portions were given, and then we contract our services with the town of Rhinebeck, and they pay us to cover it yearly.
Right. And so there's 3 separate, Hillside, Rhinecliff, and Rhinebeck.
Yep.
Is there ever talk of them merging?
Years
Worth of talk.
Years of talk.
Is it a contentious topic?
It's tough because everybody wants to keep their entity.
Keep their what?
Entity.
Right.
Everybody, it's I can understand that, nobody wants to give anything up to go under one umbrella. And it's tough. And I respect that. I do think not too long down the road here, I think the talks will get a lot deeper than they have in the past to look at how we can consolidate and how we can better serve
Right.
this community. Because, you take Rhinebeck, Hillside, and Rhinecliff, and the statement was always, we have more fire equipment in this area than the city of Newburgh.
Right.
So yeah, there's talks, and
So we're in Rhinecliff now.
Yep.
It's right here. Rhinebeck's pretty much due east of us.
Yep.
Hillside's down in the 4 lanes.
Yep.
Is that where that?
correct.
So who's out sort of like Clinton Corners way?
So that's West Clinton.
Okay, so there's another fire department there.
Yes. Yep. There's West Clinton, and then kind of like comes in on the 199 to Slate Quarry side would be Myland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm in East Rhinebeck, will the Clinton or East Myland Fire Department possibly respond to?
If you get to the fork in the road, you could get all 3 departments.
Okay.
Myland, Red Hook, and Rhinebeck.
The fork in the road.
'Cause that's where
that's where they come together.
That's where they come together.
Huh. Okay. But I'm just curious, might Mylan come first since they're closest?
Depending on, we do it, we do have alarm assignments, like depending, we broke everything's up in quadrants. So like on large calls, depending on where it is, we call and we have assignments with the closest fire company. So obviously out east is Myland, north is Red Hook, south is
Right. So you said every Monday, I think you do drills?
Yep, every Monday's drills.
Which is amazing. That's so smart. And, you sort of like retrain or refresh yourself on various pieces of equipment and stuff, which is so smart and lovely. Do you ever do that kind of like refresher drills with the other surrounding fire departments?
Yes, we get together. Usually, especially the wintertime, we'll get together and do some drills together, where it's a little easier getting people together. So there's there's always inter-drills going on.
Okay.
And making sure that everybody, and plus it gives everybody the opportunity to know the faces. So when we do call somebody 2:00 in the morning, they can recognize everybody. It's like, oh, hey.
Right. And what percentage of the calls you've gotten over the years for, fire calls, do more than one department show up to?
I mean, we have the largest amount of calls. I mean, right now our call volume is 1,200 a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but we also have an ambulance. So, a lot of times there's without a doubt that EMS outdoes fire. There's more EMS calls than fire calls.
Right.
So, it could be 60-40, could be 70-30 at times.
And those are like slip and fall or heart attack or stuff like that.
I got I cut my nail too short.
Oof.
Oh, it's happened. Yep. Yep.
Is that and EMS is part of the fire department?
Yep. We have our own ambulance. And back in the 70s, the ambulance used to be out of the Northern Dutchess Hospital. But Northern Dutchess Hospital was getting out of it. And Rhinebeck Fire Department Incorporated chose to take the ambulance over. Took the ambulance over and then made it part of the village operation.
And why is it important that they incorporated? Why did that allow them?
Because at the time, the people in the people in charge in the Rhinebeck Fire Department wanted to continue the ambulance, and a lot of the workers that worked at the hospital were also members of the fire company, so they incorporated the ambulance into our operation as it is today.
Okay, and that's a volunteer position as well. So you've got ambulance drivers.
Yep.
On call
with EMTs.
Yep. Also sort of volunteering on call.
Yep. Everybody takes a duty crew, or all the EMTs have duty crews every night from 6 to 8.
Is anybody in the fire department getting paid?
No.
Not even the chief.
Not even the chief.
Egads. Let me just say this. Thank you for your service. It's freaking nuts. It's amazing.
Yep.
I mean, all that training, all that retraining, all those hours, all the courses, all the calls and all the times you're putting your life on the line.
Yeah.
It's thank you. Anybody else listening, thank you all for your service. That's amazing. And in the surrounding municipalities, are people getting paid?
Yep. The closest paid department that we have would be Fairview. Hyde Park, Roosevelt is all volunteer. Statsburg, which is also Roosevelt as well. East Clinton, West Clinton, everything. Not until you get to Fairview, Poughkeepsie, Arlington, LaGrange.
Right.
Is paid.
And what about part-time police work? Is that paid?
Oh yeah. At the PD, you were paid. And you're still paid. As a part-time police officer.
Right.
Yeah, that's not volunteer.
Well, it could be. I mean, it's just as difficult,
right.
I would think, or one's more difficult than the other. We don't need to go into that. So is there a movement ever? I mean, the firefighters are sitting around saying, we should be getting paid for this.
I think it's more so is we know looking into the future, like 5-year span plus, there is probably, without a doubt, the village will have to seriously look at staffing, paid staffing.
Right.
The thing is that you're probably not going to get a lot of the volunteers now that want to switch over to be a paid person. Because they're probably established with, a lot of them have their own businesses, good jobs, and everything. Not saying that they're not good jobs being a firefighter. It's everybody's dream come true to become a firefighter, especially a paid firefighter.
Right.
So there's without a doubt, and I've had these conversations with the village when I was chief.
Right.
We got to start thinking about down the road because the call volume keeps going up. And
does it every year?
Every year we go up, even if it's another 50.
Why is that?
It's just we're Rhinebeck is you got the fairgrounds.
Right.
You've got the village of Rhinebeck.
But we've always had those things.
Yep, everybody, just more and more people want to come up, and more people are using the roads and so forth. And there's more auto accidents. The good thing is there's not a lot of fires. There's not a lot of fires, which is knock on wood. But there is a share of auto accidents and other other miscellaneous calls. Either your carbon monoxide detector going off, or the smell of propane, or the list goes on.
Right.
Huh. But yeah.
So what's the worst thing you've ever been exposed to on the job? And let's include the police work too.
The worst call. I guess I can say worst call is probably we had a fatal auto accident in front of Tops, which was James Way at the time.
Okay.
And
so it's going back a number of years.
And 7 kids were lost.
Oh my God. Oof.
Yep.
I kind of want to take a moment of silence for that. That's really... So is there kind of a consensus amongst the firefighters you work with? Like if I asked a group of them, they'd all be like, oh yeah, that was the worst thing. Especially
the people that are still around. We do have a good handful of people that were around that are still very active that were at that call. And
right.
Then there's obviously, there's calls that might be, a little more different, to some people now, but that was a hard hit for the fire department.
I'll bet. And how old were you when you were responded to that?
I was a lieutenant, so I'm almost positive I was 20.
20?
Yep.
Let's just call that a kid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So people get physically ill seeing the firefighters?
The good thing is that the county has a great support system. They have debriefing teams.
It's sort of like in psychological.
Yep. That come right to your firehouse, and they'll meet with everybody. They'll do a group, talk.
And is the general attitude amongst firefighters who have sort of an attitude of a feeling of being like a pretty tough bunch? Is there an attitude of fuck that, I'm not going to do that? Or the attitude, hopefully, this can't hurt.
Yeah,
Let's
the
try
good
this.
thing is that the people that might feel that they don't will come and attend it to support the ones that definitely do feel it more.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. So that's where we're unique, and it's nobody goes, yeah, I'm fine.
Nobody does that.
My question is how'd you sleep last night? Tossed and turned.
Maybe you're not fine.
Maybe you're not fine.
Huh.
So, but we've always had a good support amongst the members. Everybody's always had everybody's back, and still do.
And thinking about the camaraderie and the
Yep.
brotherhood,
Yep.
For lack of a non-gender specific word, that must pop up from all these years working together.
Yeah.
And
we're a huge family. We're
Right.
a huge family. Especially when everybody's kind of like cabin fever in the wintertime and there's not much to do, we'll get a group and, we'll go have a couple drinks, and then we'll go to Gabby's and we'll have a table of 17.
Right.
And so forth. So everybody loves hanging out with everybody.
Right.
Which is great.
And where do you get the drinks before you go to Gabby's?
Well, a lot of times sometimes we go to the Legion.
Oh, right.
Yeah, sometimes we go to the Krog.
Right.
So, we spread it out.
And what is the Legion? Are you a member there?
I'm actually, I'm a member of the American Legion. I'm a member to the Sons, which means my father was in the service during the Korean War.
Oh, yeah.
So I was able to become a Sons member with my father's DD 214, and actually I'm the commander of the Sons.
Okay. And what do the members of the American Legion do?
Well, the Legion kind of they have their meetings, they talk about, obviously, they carry their events and everything, but the Sons is more like the support staff for the American Legion. We assist with fundraisers, raising money, making sure that there's money for things to do, that there's flags to be put out and so forth. It's kind of it's a social club, but it's a business also.
Right.
And, and the Legion has their meetings and the Sons have theirs.
Flags to be put out on like Memorial Day
Yes.
and
Yep.
Veterans Day and flags to be put out in the cemetery.
Correct.
And I've seen these flags out in the cemetery for those days. There's so many of them.
Over 1,200.
So how many people show up? How many Legionnaires?
It's a combination between the Legion and the Sons. They have a regular committee that goes out, and they split everybody up between Rhinecliff and Rhinebeck and a few others that are in the surrounding areas, and they go out and new flags every year.
And so do you have a map of the cemetery?
Yes. Yep.
Where everything goes?
Yep. So if something ever happens to one person, the second person will be able to fill right in.
Right. So the American Legion, that's for people who have served in the armed forces of
Correct.
the United States.
Yep.
And the Sons are the sons of people who had.
Right.
Huh. And what branch was your pop in?
Army.
Uh-huh.
Yep. He was in engineer division.
That's funny. Yeah, my dad was in the Navy.
Okay.
Korean War.
Okay.
And he didn't talk about it much. He wasn't like traumatized or anything. But when he passed, and like the color guard was there,
Right.
and they're playing taps on the trumpet, it was so moving.
I bet.
And I was so appreciative of the work that these guys did,
Yep.
who were carrying on and caring for,
Right.
the people in the memory of those
Yeah.
who had served.
No, it's great. And like I said, I wanted to be a part of it because obviously a lot has to do with, listen, if it wasn't for a lot of these people, we wouldn't be here today, be able to have this conversation.
Right. Wow. So in all of this, did you ever think of enlisting?
I couldn't because of my shoulders.
Oh, no.
Yeah, my shoulders, I've had screws put in my shoulders because they kept popping out of socket, so I couldn't pass the physical.
Egads.
And then, they just got worse, and then I needed, so this shoulder's been replaced, and this one's going to be done in October.
Wow. So so you get a new, like a titanium
Oh, yeah, the whole
ball and socket?
everything.
That is so freaky.
It's pretty wild.
And what was the recovery like from that?
12 weeks.
12 weeks. And so now you're getting another new shoulder.
Yep.
Are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Okay.
Yep. But this one, I used all the time being right-handed, and that was fine. But then after I got the shoulder replacement, I started using this more, and
Using your left hand
the doctor
more.
told me within 2 years you're going to have this one done, and he was right.
So you're using your left hand more for what kinds of things? I mean, it's like, did you start hammering
Well,
left-handed?
I try to, I try to favor this because I probably
Right.
favor it too much because they always say, you got to be careful. It's got to last 20 years. And I'm like, okay.
The new titanium stuff.
Yeah. Because they do tell you, the more you're going to, I'm not supposed to lift anything over 50 pounds.
Ugh.
So.
Are you good?
I'm very cautious of it.
Okay,
I'm
good.
very cautious because as much as it's been the best thing I ever did to have it replaced,
Right.
I don't necessarily want to go every couple years.
No. You want it to outlast their
Yeah.
expectations.
Yeah, so my shoulders haven't been right since high school.
So that's got to be tough for like putting on, the equipment and
Yep.
fire department.
Well, it
all
got
that
to
stuff.
the point like, just after I joined, I had the screws put in my shoulders, and because they just kept popping out of socket, I mean, I would grab the refrigerator door and. I mean, when everybody sees that scene of Mel Gibson on, trying to put his shoulder back in, socket on Lethal Weapon.
That was you.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And was it a congenital thing, or did you do something to screw it up?
What they think happened is because in high school, I chose to be a speed walker.
Wait a minute. What?
A speed walker.
Okay.
So...
Which is, and what are the rules? I've seen it.
Lock your knees and pull with your heels.
But it's a funny looking sport.
Oh yeah, your hips are swaying and your shoulders are moving. So,
but do you have to have both feet on the ground at one?
Yes.
What are the rules for?
You gotta have both feet on the ground at one time, at the same time. So as you're pulling with as you're pulling with your heel, your foot should be coming up almost ready to be released to then start pulling with your heel.
Okay.
So they just think at the age of 15 when I started this that the movements and my growth couldn't keep up. So it was determined that it was just...
And were you, did this like cut short a beautiful potential speed walking career?
That was probably cut... Well...
Were you any good at it?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I hate to say... Yeah. I mean, I was New York State champ.
And I asked the question knowing in advance that you were, because people were like, "Oh, ask about speed walking."
Yep.
But New York State champ, that's fucking huge.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you were the New York State?
I did it my senior year.
And were there different distances for speed walking?
In high school, it was a mile.
Okay.
Like when I did the Empire State Games.
Yeah.
That was 3 miles.
Okay. So you're a senior. And did people get scouted for college speed walking teams?
I did.
Is it part of regular track?
At the time it was. Now it's like pretty much just like in the Olympics. It's not really involved in the high schools anymore. But going from 15 to the time I graduated and the colleges, and then, they wanted me to go, hey, we can send you to Colorado and you can train for the Olympics. And I kind of just said, I'm done.
You said no.
I said no.
I don't want to go to Colorado.
Nope.
I don't want to train for the Olympics. I don't want this to be my...
Nope. I said I'm done. I felt that I accomplished what I had to. It felt great doing it. The records that were broken and the wins and everything else. And I just said, you know what? And I'm content.
And is your banner still up at the high school here?
Banner is still up.
Love that. With your name on it.
With my name on it.
Speed walking champion.
Yep.
1982, 85.
Yep.
And they don't have it anymore.
Nope.
They don't have that sport.
Nope. It actually...
So your banner is going to be there forever.
Correct. Well, I hope. I hope my grandkids can see it.
Right. And if there's a fire there, God forbid,
I always tell everybody,
you'll race in and save the banner.
Everybody knows that whenever the alarm goes off at the high school, they go right to the gym.
That's great. What an amazing thing. And what an amazing thing to not get swept up in the success and say, I'll go to Colorado.
Yeah.
But to have the presence of mind and maturity, really,
to
say, that's great, but I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think my mom was too excited about that, but...
Well, parents get all swept up in the excitement.
I think the look was like, but no, I mean, I think they understood. They understood when I explained. I'm like, I just, and I did, after graduation, I did some open races still at, Niagara Falls and a few other places, this and that, and then it was like, all of a sudden the switch was like, okay.
But, but in Colorado, I mean, say they scouted 20, 30 kids from all over the country to train them for the Olympic team. I mean, that makes you one of the top sort of dozen or so.
Right. And I think what put that on the radar for them to look is I went to the Junior Olympics, and it was like national. It was Memphis, Tennessee, and I placed second.
Right.
So that seems to be where all of a sudden it's like, people started looking like,
Now, it seems more like that would fuck up your hips than your shoulders.
My shoulders and my knees.
And your knees.
For some reason, it's not bothering the hips.
And are the knees real, or are they titanium too?
They're real.
Okay, well, yeah.
They're real.
Good. And how are they treating you?
So far, so good. I mean, it's like, you get stiff if I'm sitting and everything else,
Sure.
But it doesn't hold me back.
And you're a golfer, too?
I'm a golfer.
So how is the new titanium shoulder working?
Actually, even with my right or my left shoulder, having some problems with it until we get it fixed, it doesn't bother the swing. It's not until I put, I raise it over my head.
But that's the non-titanium side.
Yeah, this is
that's the side that pops out from time to time.
Well, it doesn't pop out anymore. It's just, I can't, I got to use two hands if I do something. And I can't just grab a gallon of milk off the shelf.
But you can grab a Big Bertha driver and
Yep.
And swing the driver on the golf course.
Not a problem. It's weird.
It's weird. And are you any good at golf? Where do you play around here?
We camp every weekend out in Copaig.
Oh, you do?
Yep, and there's a course out there called Under Mountain that my wife and I are members at. So we golf 2-3 times a weekend. And we'll golf around here during the week.
And where do you camp in Copaig?
Out in Copaig, right in the village of Copaig. There's a camp called Camp Wabika.
And do you have a camper or do you have a tent?
I have a camper. I have a 40-foot camper with a deck built off it and my flat top grill and my regular grill and my table and chairs, and it's my summer home.
I love that.
Yep.
And it's near a lake?
It's a few miles away from Copaig Lake itself, but there's some lakes on the property.
And so you're sort of out in the woods. I mean, I'm trying to understand what's the allure, because where do you live now? You live out in the woods somewhere?
No, I live right in the village of Rhinebeck.
Okay.
Yeah, never left.
Okay.
Stayed in the village.
So now you're getting way sort of deeper into nature.
It's always been, when I met my wife, her parents camped out there. So It's like, I'm like, this is pretty neat. And then we end up getting a camper, and it's like, you know, for the involvement of the community and everything, it's a nice, I can just escape for a few days.
Right. And there's probably a whole nother community there.
Yep. We have a group we camp with every weekend.
And you build a bonfire?
Yep. We have one fire pit. Everybody has a fire pit. Then we have our community fire pit. We all get around it after dinner. On Saturdays we have, community dinner. Everybody brings something, and
I love that. And what's your favorite thing to eat at the community dinner?
Everything. Everything is always so good. I mean, we do Friendsgiving. We do a whole Thanksgiving at the end of the year. We do a seafood night. We do a taco night. We do a hibachi night, and pasta night, and soup night.
And so, do you know what it's going to be? Like a couple of days in advance of the weekend?
The ladies all send the group texts out. What are we doing next week?
Yep. I love that. And the guys do all the other
the guys help with the cooking and everything else. And it's just
fill up the camper van with gas and yeah.
So
it sounds kind of sweet.
Yeah, it's fun.
And you've been doing that your whole time together. How long have you been married?
24 years.
And y'all been doing that pretty much the whole time?
Pretty much as soon as Chrissy and I met.
And were you doing that with her parents at some point, sort of on the next campsite?
We actually end up buying a camper right across from their site.
Okay.
So, and then we upgraded, and then, to a bigger one, and then kids came, and then we upgraded to a bigger one, and then kids got older, and we got a bigger one.
and so you were bringing the kids along.
Yeah.
And do they have the camping bug now?
Ryan doesn't. And my oldest son lives in New Hampshire, so I mean, he enjoys it when he comes.
It's like camping all the time in New Hampshire.
And Lily, it's a hit or miss. Like, she'll come out this weekend because obviously she just got back from, her trip.
So she went to Madagascar with this group from Culture Connect, which is a fabulous local nonprofit, and every other year they send a group of kids for a few weeks.
Yeah, 3.5 weeks.
It's nuts.
Very.
So, were you terrified sending her out?
Yes.
Into the world like that?
Yep.
But she wanted to go.
She wanted to go. So when she would call, it's like, Chrissy had to take the phone away from me because I'm like, get all sappy. I'm like, no, I want my daughter home.
Right.
She goes, you're not talking to her anymore.
No.
So she's like, get it together. So yeah. I'm a very simple person when it comes to things like that.
Yeah. So did you get a chance to sort of debrief with her after that trip?
Actually, it was great because I mean, the whole group rented a van. Who wanted to be, hey, why don't we rent a van to get the kids back and everything else? And I looked at Chrissy. I'm like, she's not going in the van. She already made it very clear I'm to pick her up.
Right.
So she called and they're like, do you want the van? No, Dad's getting me. So it was great picking her up at the airport and be able to have that time.
JFK?
JFK. Have that time to be able to hear all about it.
That's an amazing thing.
And it was amazing.
It's a horrible drive, but if you get a chance to be in the car with your kid for 2.5 or 3 hours, depending on traffic, it's such a valuable and beautiful opportunity. So what were her impressions of this trip to Madagascar?
A lot of respect. Obviously how the culture is obviously there to hear.
Right.
Had a very understanding how fortunate we are here. And then, just she took it all in. She, all the way to the chocolate factories, to the, the rainforest where they got to go whitewater rafting down the rainforest and kayaking and everything else. So it's like, how many people can say they had the opportunity to do that?
Right.
So she, and just meeting with the locals and everything else and the kids and so forth, she was very set back and like, this is unbelievable.
And is she a rising senior?
She's actually a senior, but she's going to be doing her senior year at Dutchess Community College.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So she's done at Rhinebeck Central School District.
Yep.
And why did she choose to do that?
She was just ready to start getting things under her belt to be able to move on to college after she graduates.
And it sounds, I'm guessing she knows what she wants to study.
She has an idea. I'm like not quite sure because it kind of bounces, but I mean, I guarantee she won't be. I mean, she's looking at down south, like coastal, things, so like, yeah. So she's
looking at like after DCC finishing her high school to matriculate somewhere another.
Yep. Because it was funny because after she came out of the, checking her bags and everything, I saw her. And, of course, the simple dad comes out again. And she's like, what are you crying for? She goes, what are you going to do when I go to college? I said, well, at least you'll be in the United States. So you're not on a 14-hour air flight.
Right.
So. But she's a tough cookie.
Yeah. I would think if you weren't going out on that trip, chances are you might be when you come back.
Yeah.
It's a long time away.
Yep.
And a lot of different things.
Yep. And she did great.
Right.
She did great.
And what do you think, from your perspective, is the best thing she got out of that trip?
How lucky she is.
Right.
What she has, to respect what she has.
Right.
Don't take things for granted.
Right. The privilege of growing up in Rhinebeck.
Yep.
Being white and all these things.
And looking what, how things are survived over there.
Right.
Especially, with the younger kids and so forth.
Tough it is.
Yep.
Right.
So she definitely has a good outlook now.
Right. Right. And before?
Pretty much the. I mean, she's always, like I said, she's always. I mean, she'll tell you she's going to be the first female chief in the Rhinebeck Fire Department. I mean, she's got goals.
Really?
Yeah, she doesn't mess around.
I love that.
Yep. She she doesn't mess around. I mean, she's got a lot of, she's got her, the drive that Chrissy and I had in the fire service and everything else, and
right.
But she doesn't take anything. It's like,
right. Good for her. So what does she think she wants to major in?
I think biology.
Okay. And then go off to a 4-year school after DCC and study more biology.
Yep.
And then come back here.
I don't know if she would or not. I mean, I think she'll go to wherever she can, obviously, start a career, be honest with you.
Right. And what kind of career in biology do you reckon she is interested in?
I'm not really quite sure because it's still. I just sit back in the shadows a little bit.
Sure.
It's like throw it at me when you're ready.
And your kids, all of them, they throw it at you enough that you're happy to sit back.
Yeah,
and watch.
I mean, my two boys really weren't interested to go to college.
Right.
But they've ended up with the older one with a career, working at a distributor out in for engineered lumber out in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And then actually then Ryan actually just became an employee at the Village of Rhinebeck.
Oh, nice.
Working at the highway garage.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Nice.
So.
And does he think maybe he'd like to do that?
Well, he wanted to be able to have something that could be a career. And I think getting his foot in the door to, obviously, New York State retirement and benefits and,
right. So what age do you think you'll retire?
My son?
You.
I don't know. Probably. I mean, I love my job, so.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to go too long, but I would probably say mid-60s. I'll go to
mid-60s.
Yep.
Right. And there's no mandatory retirement age at the Department of Public Works.
No. You know, I mean, I enjoyed every day. It's been my goal to, like, I always consider myself, it was the ongoing joke, I felt like a full-time volunteer. Like, because that's all I did is work in the community, like, volunteer everything. And it's like, and then when, you know, this job came about a few years ago, I'm like, I need to go for that. I mean, that's like my goal, to be able to work for the taxpayers and to be able to give them a service they're paying for.
So the job superintendent of Public Works, how long have you had it?
2.5 years.
Wow.
Yep.
Relatively new.
Yep.
And what were you doing when this came up?
I worked for Northern Dutchess Paramedics.
Oh.
Yep. I was the director of marketing and sales.
Okay.
So I worked an administrative role.
And marketing to whom?
Facilities.
Okay.
Selling the company.
Oh, because it's a sort of a freelance company for whoever needs it.
Right. So
it's called Northern Dutchess, but it's not affiliated with the hospital.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So, you know, obviously, you know, I would go to facilities and, you know, sell the company for transports and everything else and standbys and so forth. And then actually I end up liking it more than I thought. And I became an EMT through Northern Dutchess.
But what a change. All of a sudden you're a business person. I mean, did you wear like a coat and tie? You made the calls and...
No, I wore a pair of Dockers and a collared shirt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. But
yeah, because I was at the lumberyard when NDP approached me.
Okay.
And said, hey.
At the lumberyard Williams.
Yep. And I'm like...
You were on the contractor desk
correct.
By now.
And I was like, you know, because I enjoyed emergency services. So
right.
I'm like, yeah, this could be different. I'm like, all right, we're going to try this. And, you know, I spent 15 years there until the village said, hey, listen, we're looking to fill this position. So I put in for it.
Nice. And what hoops did you need to jump through to get that position?
I just basically, I filled out an application of resume and went through the interview process.
And is it the whole village sort of board that needed to vote on?
It was 3 members of the board.
Okay.
Obviously, they had to kind of do it differently because having 3 members doing the interview process, they couldn't because then it would count as a meeting. So 2 would do...
What does that mean? Would count as a meeting?
Because if you have more than 2 village board members, it counts as a meeting because it counts as a quorum. Yeah, so you can't...
That's funny. This seems like the setup for a joke.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's like, you know, I could be in Gary's office and a trustee would walk in and then a second trustee would walk in and start talking and Gary's like, no, we can't.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
It is a setup for a joke. That's absurd.
Yeah, no, it's you got to be careful.
Because if you have more than 3 in one place, then it's an official meeting.
Yep.
And somebody is going to squawk about that.
There will be somebody.
There will be a squawk. People seem to really like to do that.
Yeah, there's...
The gotchas.
Yep, they like to just... And they'll find it and they'll run with it.
Is there a nickname you can share for the people who are the gotchas?
I just...
Looks like a no.
Brutal.
Brutal.
Sometimes I just shake my head. I'm
right.
Like, people have way too much time in their hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
oof. So you interviewed, but not in a meeting, and you got hired. Were there any dissenting votes?
There was only one. There was only one, and I was a board member that felt that the job could have been done part-time.
Oh.
And which was fine. I totally respected the honesty because I actually sat at the meeting, went to the meeting when they voted to approve my position.
Okay.
And
which is open to the public.
Yeah, open to the public. And I know I made him a little uncomfortable probably. And I'm like, don't worry about me. I'm a big boy. And I respected his honesty through it.
Right. And what do you think? I mean, could it be a part-time?
I don't know how they could have done it with a part-time job because it's there's a lot because you gotta figure that I oversee the highway department.
Okay.
I oversee the water department,
Uh-huh.
and I oversee wastewater. So especially now we have, we're in a process of drawings and, Department of Health approval and DEC and everything else. We have a $6 million upgrade project we're going to be starting, hopefully, at the end of the year.
To the wastewater
water
facility?
plant.
Okay.
And then we have about a $3 million project that we're going to be starting at wastewater.
Okay. So the water plant is drawing water from the Hudson River.
Hudson River, correct.
Right. And this is one of I guess your boss is Gary?
Yep.
This is one of his really big areas
The Hudson 7.
of passion.
Yep.
The Hudson 7. What is that?
It's just kind of the group that kind of makes sure that everything's legit with the traffic coming up and down the Hudson River, like,
Right.
the docking or the anchoring of, the boats and so forth. The biggest thing they've worked on is the dredging of the power lines going to be coming down.
Oof.
So, they've worked very well with that, going up and down with the municipality, especially where our intake is.
And where is our intake?
Right down to Rhinecliff, right off Slate Dock Road is
Right.
like literally like right there.
So I'm on South Street on town water, on village water.
Yep.
And so that water comes from the Hudson. It
Yep.
gets cleaned up and
Goes up to Hiley Road,
Shipped
and
up
then
here.
that's where we draw off.
Hiley Road,
Yep.
which is where there's a huge water tank.
Our reservoir. Yep.
So, reservoir. So it's pumped up there.
Yep.
And then it's just sort of like gravity
fed to everybody.
Huh. And what is the benefit of pumping it up there instead of just pumping it to everybody?
Well, because the pumps would never stop, and you would never be able to keep up with the capacity of the use.
Oh, I see. So the pumps are not on all the time.
Nope.
They pump a bunch up there.
Nope. Obviously in
done.
the summertime, there's more, so forth, especially when we start getting to events at the fair.
Right.
People watering, when we had the dry spell, people watering their yards,
Right.
and so forth. So it's definitely, we have to, pump a little more, but yeah.
So what was the biggest jaw-dropping thing when you took over at the Department of Public Works?
how clean the wastewater plant was.
Oh, that's such a good answer.
Amazing. Amazing. It's not what everybody thinks.
Yeah. Huh.
It is. It's to watch the process, how it comes in and it leaves into the stream, trout friendly.
Right.
It's just amazing of the process.
Right. The stream, which is just like, a few feet from the river.
No, the stream, actually, where everything is released is a stream right on Astor Drive, which
Okay.
then eventually goes down.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's like, I walked in and thought this was going to be like,
Yeah.
okay, I got it. No.
Holding your nose. is a good
obviously with the initial intake is yes, there's an odor,
Sure.
obviously, but not as bad as you think.
And is that process still pretty good? I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Do you ever look into like other things like anaerobic digesters or that kind of crap to?
They are. The problem is it depends on if our plant can handle it or not.
Right.
We're doing upgrades where we can't get too carried away because we can't grow our capacity right now.
Okay.
So we're pretty maxed out on real estate, on our footprint where we are, but we still have a lot of room to work. So,
Right.
I think our capacity that we can do every day is 270,000 gallons a day,
Right.
and we're averaging maybe 125, 130.
Okay, that's nice.
It's great.
Huh. And so were you involved in the composting stuff as well?
That's kind of after I first started, when they wanted to create there was talks at one time before I started is doing composting down there, but again it was space, and then obviously that's when they started working on the compost spot and location out by the village garage.
Right. And so that's not sort of under your...
No.
It's not in your department?
No.
All right, so that was the biggest positive surprise. What was the biggest negative surprise when you started this job? You don't have to answer this question.
No, I think there was, I kind of, being so involved in the village, I kind of had an idea what was going on. I knew you know, I mean, I knew equipment had to be replaced. We had to start updating things. And the village board was great when I first started. I mean, I think we bought, my first year and a half, 7 pieces of equipment.
Because you're going to the village board, making the case, we need this, we need that. You need to approve the budget to buy this.
Yep.
So
was able to still keep the budget.
So it's another sales job, like with the ambulances.
Yep. So, and that was, like I said, it was initially, but now we're in a good place with all the departments. We're on a good 5-year plan for rotating equipment and so forth, and it's working out.
Right.
And the staff has been great. We've made some modifications. We've had, obviously people go and people come, but I couldn't be happier with the staff that we have in the 3 departments.
That's great.
Yep. And again, the village board is
especially your kid.
That's right. I know. He said he called up the other night. He goes, "Hey, do we have to call your supervisor?"
Yeah.
And so the wife's like, "Really?" I'm like, I was only joking.
Apart from your kid, who's the biggest pain in the ass in town or village government who you have to deal with on a regular basis? I want names, please. If you could spell their last name, that'd be helpful.
There's really,
you better not answer this. I'll be in so much trouble.
There's really nobody because...
Yeah, good answer.
I look at it, again, and it feels great to do this job, and I keep resorting to the fire company, but it's like the fire company, we serve the community. Right. It was all about customer service. It was all about, protecting life and property and everything else. And this is a lot what this job has to do. And it's like, my phone rings constantly. I had a lady call up today. You missed my pile. I go over. I'm like, not a problem. We'll take care of it.
I love that.
It's like, and then there's some people that will call up and say, you didn't do this. And I'm like, yeah, we did.
So you say life and property. And I heard at some point you saved a life while you were on vacation.
Yes.
What was that?
We were away down in Cancun, and I got up in the morning because I don't sleep on, vacation.
What time do you get up?
Usually about 6 a.m. And I went to grab the USA Today, and went out to the beach and read the paper, and people were screaming, and I pulled this lady out of the water and started CPR, and she made a full recovery.
That's amazing. And so, was that the first life you've saved? No. I mean, but first life you've saved not in a professional capacity?
Correct. But the first life I saved in the fire department capacity was also a drowning on a 4-year-old.
Oh. Egads. I mean, do you know how many lives you've saved or your department has saved over the years?
There's been quite a few. Everybody's done a great job with CPR calls and so forth.
Right.
So
all right.
Countless.
Great. Now you're a righty, which means that your lead, all the action is on the left side of your body.
Correct.
Left shoulder, left arm, and the stress is on your left shoulder. And you're speculating that might be what's keeping you from being a scratch golfer. My words, not yours.
I'm saying I could be a little better, but I definitely favor it more so because of what I've been through with it.
I'm just going to razz you a little bit here. How much time do you spend on the putting green?
None.
Yeah, see, there you go.
None.
Drive for show, putt for go.
Yep. But it's like it's like Saturday I shot a 40, and then
that's pretty good.
I showed up on Sunday and shot a 36.
One of my best rounds ever was 35 on the front side and 45 coming in.
That's all right.
Fuck. But it was so exciting.
Oh, absolutely.
To have that.
Absolutely. 45 and under is awesome.
And now I don't play. I'm trying to shoot 110 or something. But I still have the old woods.
Right.
Like power built woods. So did you play golf when you were in high school?
No.
Okay.
Nope. I actually, before race walking, I did Little League and everything. I was a catcher.
Oh, I was a catcher.
Yep. And to make the story is, when I was 15, I made the varsity team for baseball. I was a catcher. And how I got into race walking is I did cross country, and then all of a sudden we're at baseball practice, and I see this kid shaking his hips. I took my shin guards off, went over to my coach from cross country and said, "What is that?" He told me what it was, and I raced him, and I beat him.
Just right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate.
Poor kid.
Yep. And then
Where's that kid today?
2 weeks later, they pulled me aside and like, why don't you go with Coach Hicks and see how this works out for a couple of weeks? And you have a spot on the team, but he really wants to see what you can do. He thinks something's there.
Right.
And I never looked back.
And what do you think it was that was there?
I think, obviously I was a string bean. I just think it was just something that I took naturally.
Right. But you're not like double jointed in your hips. So there's nothing, like no weird physical aberration that.
No. Yeah. I mean, my first race, I ended up doing like a 7:30 mile.
Walking. Yeah, I used to jog. I think the best mile I ever had was like 8:30.
Yeah. Then I ended up doing 6:18, 6:20 miles.
Amazing.
By the time I ended everything.
Was there a movie called Walk Don't Run that was about competitive race walking?
I'm not sure.
Somehow this is ringing a bell. It's a really there's not a good word for this. Kind of a comical movement to watch.
I'm going to look that up.
Comical? Oh, the movie.
The movie.
Yeah. No, but I mean people race walking because they're moving in a way that's really not as natural as walking or running.
Right. But to this day, I still wake up 2:00 in the morning and watch the Olympics for the men's race walking competition.
I love that. And do you ever race walk yourself anymore?
I tried it around a campfire one night.
In Copac.
Somebody wanted to race me. And
after a couple of gin and tonics.
And then there went the hamstring.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
When you were a kid, you probably stretched first.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're older,
of course we're stretching.
I stretched. I had 2 G&Ts.
I had 2 gin and tonics. I'm fine. And the last words were from the wife: "You're going to hurt yourself."
Oh, geez, isn't it just so horrible when your spouse is right?
And it hurt so bad. It was bad. I'm like, I'm okay, honey. Don't worry about it.
And so, what do they do for a torn hamstring? I mean, it's just time.
Yeah, just time.
Keep off of it. No more race walking.
Nope, I just limped around. And haven't done it since. Everybody encourages me. Come on, do it a little. I mean, to this day, like, can you show us that race walking?
Right.
I'm like, you don't want to see it.
But stretch first.
Stretch first.
Right. And so you follow it. Are there race walking superstars?
Not that I know by name, because I don't follow it until like I know it's coming on in the Olympics when the Summer Olympics come around. So I don't. I mean, it's huge in Europe. Huge.
I was going to say, is there a country that's always sort of like leading the pack in race walking talent?
Usually Europe is like
Finland or some
Italy
weird
or Nordic. Yeah, it's just those guys are like unbelievable, and they're averaging like 7-minute miles through 24 miles.
Oh, geez.
Oh yeah, it's like.
So wait, race walk marathons?
Yep, in the Olympics.
Is that the only race walking event in the Olympics?
Yes.
It's the race walking marathon.
Yep.
And what is a foul? How do you? I mean, is somebody watching to make sure that they're doing it?
Judges throughout the course
to make sure they're doing it right.
Yep.
And do people ever cheat? Like, I don't see any judge. I'm just going to sprint this section.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get a warning card. I mean, it's almost like the red card in soccer. It's like, well, you're done.
Would you get a yellow card first, and
they'll get your warning first,
and then a red card, and you're out.
And then you're out
for cheating at race walking.
And not locking your knees and pulling with your heel.
Well, and locking your knees, and where? I mean, you need to bend your knees at some point. Where do they have to lock?
Just as you're extending. It's got to lock.
Okay. As you're extending, they need to lock.
Yep.
All right. When we leave here tonight,
well, I'll give you a brief.
Yeah, a slow brief.
Slow brief.
Yeah. I don't want to risk the wrath of your wife.
I will demonstrate.
All right, good. I can't wait for that. So I wanted to ask you about growing up in Rhinebeck. You've been here your entire life. How has it changed mostly, do you think?
Traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt, it's the village is beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't fault people for wanting to come here.
No.
To spend their weekends here.
Yeah.
And I've always said, it's like, I mean, yes, can it be frustrating at times? Without a doubt. But, again, I go to camp on weekends, so it's like I don't sit in front of Al Stickles waiting for the light to turn 7 times. So,
Right.
So, but it's like, I look at it this way. I mean, you go across the river and head out towards Monticello, and you see businesses that are boarded up and Pizza Huts that just don't make it anymore. And Rhinebeck's alive.
Right.
Rhinebeck, I mean, the people coming in and visiting on weekends are keeping everybody in business.
Has it ever been otherwise during your lifetime?
Always seen it busy.
Right.
Always seen it busy.
Rhinebeck's always had a little something that kept it vibrant.
And because it helps where, obviously the Dutchess County Fair plays a huge part.
Right.
Not only the fair, but there are other shows that they host up there. So that helps, the car shows and the antique shows and the sheep and wool. I mean, that sheep and wool fest is like
insane.
2 days of the fair with traffic and the amount of people. It's crazy.
It's crazy. That is like the most popular thing.
Correct.
So do you ever do security at the fair anymore?
I just do it Fair Week.
Oh, you still do that?
Oh, yeah, Fair Week, yep.
Security Fair Week. And what kinds of things are you called for?
I do security at the beer tent.
Oh, God. Which is the busiest place for security.
Well, yes.
Do people get in fights?
No, we run it pretty... See, the fire department runs the beer tent next to the stage.
I see.
So we were offered it 15 years ago, and we accepted.
And for how much? What do you pay to get the beer tent?
We pay nothing.
Really?
We work and split the proceeds with the Dutchess County Fair.
Is that typical for vendors? I know some people pay to be there.
Some people pay to be there. But
right.
It's just an agreement with the volunteers we have and the fairgrounds. Everybody makes
50-50.
A fundraiser, and it works out great for us.
Right. Huh, I'll bet.
So during the day, I'll I'll volunteer and help the operations. I run the beer tent with conjunction of the fair, and then when the shows start, I become security guard to make sure that everybody's being ID'd and so forth. And in 15 years, we probably had 2 scuffles in the beer tent.
That's like nearly nothing.
We just
statistically insignificant.
If it looks like it's getting out of control, we shut it down.
Right.
It's just there's no ifs buts about it. We're very strict. We're very conscious of. I mean, we won't let people in if they're intoxicated. We proof everybody.
Right.
And again, if it looks like when the beers start being spilled on somebody, then that's when the chain reaction starts, and we'll cut it off. I mean, we'll call last call.
Right. Interesting.
And the fairgrounds loves it because of that.
Right. So do people ever sort of like try to pick a fight with you, the security guy?
No.
Right. How tall are you?
6'4".
6'4".
Yep.
How much? What's your reach?
Well, with what arm? No.
Yeah, I know. So, did the surgery, did the new shoulder affect your reach?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it just like I said, there's a difference between the new one and obviously
if you pop it out of the joint, you get another inch or two.
Right.
But you're an imposing figure, so people are not likely to sort of
right. And we have a great relationship with working with the state police up there.
Right.
Usually the sergeant will give me a couple uniformed guys, towards the end of the night just to be present. But we, like I said, we very few problems. We make last call at 10:30. I always say the longer you serve, the more problems you're going to have.
Sure.
And we want everybody to be able to come and have a great time. And leave and come back and do it the next night.
Right. Huh. So you're there every night of the fair?
Every day. I've never, ever, on the 3 jobs that I had, never worked during Fair Week.
Never worked as a fireman or
never worked at
police
Williams
officer
Lumber,
or
Williams Lumber police officer. I did because we would do security, so that we would work in plain clothes.
Oh, okay.
And then, but NDP, I never worked during Fair Week. I always had Fair Week off to do what I do up there.
For what, 40 some years?
Yep, 39 to be exact. That's why I said my next life I'm going to be a carny.
A carny. It sounds like a horrible job.
No, it's great. It's pretty impressive, though. If you get behind the scenes and look what it takes for these showmen, I'll say, to be able to come in, set up, and then 6 days later leave.
Right.
And then, It's pretty impressive.
But you've lived, 56, 57 years in one town,
Yep.
one village.
Yep.
And you say next life, you're going to be a peripatetic sort of carny. You're going to be all over the place.
I love it.
Live in a camper van.
Nice fifth wheel with a dually truck.
Well, I hope that works out for you. But it's certainly worked out for Rhinebeck that you've been here that whole time.
Yep.
And I just want to say again, thank you so much for your lifetime of service.
Oh, thank you.
To this village, because one of the things that continues to make it vibrant is people like you and your selflessness.
I appreciate that.
Thanks again. And everybody, thanks for tuning in and listening to my interview. I'm just honored to have been here with Kyle Eighmy.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, one more thing. Do we have time? Amyville Road. Is that your
That's
people?
us.
That's us.
1856. 800 acres. That's where the Amy's came in, and then...
Where did they come from?
They actually came from the 1600s in Clove Valley.
Where's Clove Valley?
Out towards Burbank.
Okay. Wow. So that's kind
I
of...
brushed that up on some dates with my father before I came here.
Oh, you did? That's
Because
nice.
I knew it was going to be...
I almost forgot.
Yep.
Well, that's got to be kind of a beautiful connection to this land.
Yep.
And this town.
Yeah, when everybody sees my last name, it's always Amyville Road. I'm like, yep.
Yeah. And so who was it? Who was the Amy who got those 800 acres?
It was my father's ancestors.
Okay.
Yep.
And how many ancestors of this, the original Amy, are there around here? Do you have family reunions?
There's actually, we have a very, very small family. My father was an only child.
Okay.
So it was, obviously his parents and my father. And then my mother is from Schuylerville, New York, which is 10 miles east of Saratoga.
Right.
And she had a sister. And then I just, and it was just my brother and I growing up.
Right. Huh.
And that was it. That was the extent of the very small family.
There must be Amy somewhere who moved away.
No, there was Amy's, but they were Days, meaning their last name was Days. So there was Amy's that, on my father's side, that became that married into Days and so forth. But there's actually no more. This is it with the Amy's right here.
All right. Wow. Well, luckily you've got a boy. Maybe you'll have 6 kids.
I've got 2 boys, and hopefully,
five of them will be boys.
Yeah.
And carry on the Amy name. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
I've been here talking with race walking champion and public servant Kyle Eighmy. Everybody, take care. Bye.
Thank you.